My name's Kevin Murcko. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Coinmetro. 24 years worth of experience in the broader financial markets and fintech.
Wow, that was really efficient.
I'm Alberto Toribio. I come from Cryptoplaza, one of the largest Spanish-speaking crypto communities. And I started in crypto in 2013, founding a company, a crypto exchange with a bank as a partner.
Hi, my name is Stephen. I've been working crypto for about 5 years. I'm working for a company called Vega now. We're building a decentralized derivative protocol, and I work in finance.
Hi, I'm Jeremy King, Chief Investment Officer at Digital Asset Management, now known as Damex. We buy, sell, store digital currencies, as our CEO, Sam Buxton, was talking about earlier on. Recently just launched a fund. Our retail app is coming out soon as well. We have a B2B payments platform as well. So yeah, we have quite a few things going on. Been in the space for 5 years as well.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Welcome to all of you. So again, to repeat one of my catchphrases, explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. Explain why we need DeFi and what it is like I'm 5 years old.
Sure. So I'm coming from a centralized exchange, which is probably a bit ridiculous, that question for me, but I can definitely answer it. So, you know, decentralization is probably one of the biggest changes that we have seen from traditional finance into what we can call this alternative finance. It's probably one of the biggest. And there's only one word to make it the biggest, which is access. We're probably going to talk about regulation at some point here. There's a lot of roadblocks to access to people around the world, and that's because most things are centralized when it comes to finance. Decentralization, or DeFi, decentralized finance, allows people to break through those barriers without having to go through the same relative nonsense that you have to do in traditional finance to achieve the same goals.
Any of you care to add? Help a 5-year-old.
Why we need DeFi? Well, when we talk about Bitcoin, the first application built on top of a blockchain, we know it comes with some properties. For example, open, public, neutral, borderless, and censorship resistance. When we build financial services on top of a blockchain, it comes also with these properties. So that's because we need DeFi services, because they comes with these properties too, and because it allows to build a new whole financial systems with censorship resistance, neutrality. Well, this is why we need DeFi, in my opinion.
No, definitely. You can tell in the market cap, the stablecoins have gained in the last 33 months since the all-time highs of 2019. The market cap's gone up like 25,000%. So it really goes to show, like, you know, most of the DeFi ecosystem relies on like stablecoins and stuff. So yeah, it's a.
Would you say that stablecoins are they themselves DeFi, or are they potentially a component of a DeFi ecosystem?
They're definitely a component of the DeFi ecosystem because people need liquidity. And like, I think it's like 45% of all DEXs out there comprise of liquidity pools with stablecoins as part of the collateral, basically.
Please.
So I take a different approach to that question and say no. In fact, because while there are decentralized stablecoins, right? We all know about one, or that doesn't exist anymore, called UST, that tried to solve a problem and created a bigger one. But most stablecoins are centralized in nature, so they're going to have some type of component that pegs their value to something else. And to be honest, another point about decentralization that makes it unique is the lack of counterparty risk. And when you talk about stablecoins in crypto, well, if we unrolled that counterparty risk today, we'd be here up 4 hours just talking. There's a ton of counterparty risk. And the problem with that counterparty risk is that there aren't really rules set to control that counterparty risk. And so I would say that actually, while stablecoins can be an entry into decentralized finance, in most cases, they are absolutely not part of the ecosystem. They are an on or off ramp, just like fiat is into the crypto ecosystem.
Okay, so I'm going to reframe it kind of and wrap back into your question. We're talking about DeFi, you know, a little bit of hype versus reality. Just one more time, what's the problem, what's the legacy issue we're trying to solve? I didn't quite get the clear answer to that one.
Well, there's a few legacy issues. The one that I'm mentioning is just centralization in general, which means that there's an authority that controls the ecosystem. that authority is usually human-driven. So humans are flawed, meaning the systems they build are flawed. And so decentralization removes that counterparty risk, which is human, from the equation and allows us to build much more, I would say, probably fair systems in finance.
You guys agree, or do you want to add?
I do agree. I think DeFi is a lot about giving the consumer that choice. A lot of people talk about DeFi and its ability to replace traditional finance. What I like to tell people is that DeFi is not about replacing traditional finance, but rather about giving the consumer that choice of whether they want to be part of kind of one world or the other. Over the years, we've seen a loss of trust in centralized kind of bodies, which is kind of where crypto and DeFi was born. And yeah, a lot of users of DeFi, and the key component of it is like the accessibility and the transparency that people are seeking in not wanting to rely on that central body.
Sure. I mean, and the way I take it personally is it's kind of the Bitcoin idea. You're getting rid of the intermediary. You're getting rid of the clearing function or the gatekeeping function. But those functions exist for a reason. Do you feel that the technology is presently able to take over these capacities, or it's getting there? And that's a question.
I agree. I do think, and again, I don't know whether we want it to take over. I do think there's room for both. I do think we are an early, even though it's been a while, and people, I mean, the title of this panel is expectation versus reality. Maybe a lot of people out there thought that by this point we would be further ahead, but I am adamant that we're still in the early stages of DeFi, and it's still going to be some time where we find kind of real-world adoption, where we're able to solve some problems in the traditional finance in terms of kind of the more technical features outside of just being good for what it is, which is that transparency and decentralization aspect of it.
Okay, so to Jeremy's point, yes, the total stablecoin value has gone up a great deal, but as I understand it, since crypto summer in 20, the total value locked, I believe, is dropping. Is DeFi still taking off, or did it just kind of hit a rough spot?
I think we've seen a few cycles. I think the first, a lot of people call it DeFi 1.0 and DeFi 2.0. Personally, I think 1.0 would kind of pave the way for everything that's happening now. And it is. I mean, a lot of these protocols still have the same level of volume, and Aave and Compound are two examples of this. And yeah, maybe volume's dropped off a bit, but they have been able to find product market fit, and that volume is still there. DeFi 2.0, I'm probably a bit more critical about it. I think we just saw very high kind of APYs and very unsustainable business models there. But I'm super excited about what's coming next. An example of that, like following on from the Compound and Aave business model, is the under-collateralized loans, which is a real-world use case. And now we're seeing kind of institutions making use of this through protocols such as Maple Finance.
Alberto, I feel like you wanted to comment.
No, just to remember, one problem we are solving with DeFi is nowadays many companies are getting funded using cryptocurrencies. So when you receive cryptocurrencies and you have a treasury, you need to manage a new kind of treasury. So the most natural way to do it is probably to use DeFi products instead, to put your money in a centralized exchange or so. So for me, that's one problem DeFi products are solving. The second one is the efficiency in terms of the using of the capital. With DeFi products, for example, with the stable coins and many other products, we are getting more efficiency in the money bandwidth, which is the money available to use on different layers of the DeFi space. So this is another problem we are solving with DeFi. It's a very huge problem in the traditional finance model. We have not this problem here just because we have a lot of products around the DeFi ecosystem.
Fair enough. One idea I hear floated a lot is that DeFi won't necessarily replace legacy or centralized finance, but they'll coexist somehow or integrate somehow. I guess that sounds interesting, but I can't visualize it. I can't see where the border would be.
Right. I suppose that's where all the tech and know your tech infrastructure that people are building currently and stuff. I think that's going to become very useful. Or it is very useful as it is now, but in the future, I think you're going to get a lot of at least governments building regulations around the actual technology behind it and what they're going to allow their people, as was mentioned previously in the last talk. I think it's going to come down to that, what governments are going to allow people to essentially use. And Know Your Tech is going to be obviously used to help with on-chain data, to basically look for money laundering and all these other issues that come with
you anticipated my question 2 questions from now, so we're going to come back to that. But I'm wondering, separate from regulation, is there any kind of natural synergy between centralized finance and decentralized finance, such that they come together and produce something better, or are they inherently competitive, one replacing or fighting with the other?
I think I can touch on this one. So, like every piece of nuanced tech, there are good and bad. There are things that potentially can change the game, and there are things that just copy the previous game. And DeFi is no different. In fact, everything we do on DeFi, traditional finance already does. You can name anything, and I'll give you the equivalent.
Is that true? I mean, automated market makers?
Absolutely exist. For sure,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, automated marketers definitely exist. We call that high-frequency trading, but absolutely, it's the same premise. In fact, most high-frequency trading does not actually trade to try and make a profit. They trade to try and churn money, which actually the liquidity is the actual product, and that's where the money's made. So yeah, absolutely, it exists. Even
Sorry, I interrupted you, but one of your theses or axioms, I guess,
Yeah.
is that at the moment DeFi is replicating CeFi functionality, and if I heard you correctly, you're saying not bringing anything new to the table yet.
No, there's good and bad. Just that most of the things that exist, we're making copies of. The key difference, obviously, is the decentralization and is the access, again. Access, though, right now is available because regulators haven't put their eyes on DeFi. And to the other gentleman's point, I hope that the tech isn't regulated. If that happens, these rooms are going to get a lot smaller. There's never been a history of regulation of tech in finance that has worked. And in fact, most that have brought to the table have been destroyed. And there's always been tech in finance. This isn't anything new. We're not the first to bring tech into the financial ecosystem. So, DeFi has a lot of good. It's still very immature. But the problem is that as we get more into a more regulated market in crypto, and the people that were in crypto because it wasn't regulated start to migrate to DeFi, we're just creating a cyclical effect. So we start to solve problems that don't exist, and we end up back, unfortunately, in a plausible scenario, to no better than we are today. Meaning we have cool little toys, but those cool little toys don't actually solve any additional problems.
So go ahead.
Your question is interesting because the relationship between the DeFi and CeFi is probably related with the rise of a new trend. As I see, we have different trends with the potential of getting or capitalize 1 trillion. The first one could be, for example, neutral assets. Bitcoin was the first, for example. The second one could be, for example, stable coins or smart contracts with the potential of build a lot of things on top, like financial services and so. And nowadays, we are seeing the rise of this trend. Probably the rise of the first trend, the CeFi products, comes with Coinbase on the public stock exchange. And nowadays, what we are seeing is Coinbase and centralized exchange using DeFi because it's the trend right now. And the last trend on the table could be the app chains and things like DYDX, applications with a lot of users which needs like to have your own blockchain to validate your business. So well, this is the relationship for me between CeFi and DeFi is just because there is a new trend on rise, and the last trend is using this new trend to get in more profit.
Yeah, I think like it's definitely going to run side by side. If not, you're going to get more companies like Celsius where they just leverage too much of their assets, and no one finds out until the last moment when they're trying to pull out their funds. So I definitely think that it's definitely going to work coincide with the tech as well as traditional markets.
They're going to both exist, or they're going to interact?
Well, they're both going to exist side by side, but like as central entity, you're going to be exploring the decentralized financial avenues that your average person in the street is going to do. But at the end of the day, you're just going to make money as long as the technology you're working with is actually has sustainable, transparent, and efficient. Why can't anyone else do what the banks are doing?
Doesn't it lose some of its democratic access flavor if that's true?
Yeah, to a certain extent it does, but at the same time, the opportunities are there for anyone to grab. So if someone else is going to do it, why?
Yeah, it's the usual problem, right? It's like it's an open protocol that anyone technically can access, but in real life, for it to really get access, you need some sort of UI company providing a way to get in that grandma can use.
But
All due respect to grandma.
But you're talking about neutrality, not democracy. It's different. Right. Yeah, of course we are talking about neutral, radically neutral financial services. But usually they are not democratic.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do they ever stay neutral?
Sorry?
Do they ever stay neutral?
Yeah.
These access points?
Yeah. Basically, the Compound or EVE or whatever, they interact with every user in the same way. That's because they are neutral. It doesn't matter if you are Russian or Ukrainian or whatever. Basically, that's because I'm saying it is neutral. It doesn't matter if your money comes from laundering money or whatever. It is going to work in the same way. That's because it's neutral. One property which comes from the blockchain, basically.
Okay. Kevin, I feel like you want to.
I think the future is hybrid, right? So to your question, I think it is where they work together. Because at the end of the day, if anybody have a guess onto just in the, let's say New York, let's say the US stock market, just US stock market on clearing, not settlement, just settlement, 1 year, what's the number? Settlement of US stocks 1 year, dollar figure. It's $1.66 quadrillion. You take that into reference to where we are now, it's clear to me that while the traditional finance will use what they want from DeFi, and it's our job to make sure that we have a narrative so that the good pieces that we like, that obviously they may not, still remain. And that's our collective job in the industry, because if everybody sits back on their laurels thinking that this is amazing and changing the world, traditional finance will eat it, and they will use it to their advantage, which is what they always do in the history of fintech. Even something like PayPal is a good story. PayPal was created to give eBay sellers the ability to take credit cards. No one would do it because no one would take the risk. They created a risk-based approach that allowed, and that was very difficult back in the day. And what is PayPal now? It's just another piece of traditional finance. I mean, it's gone. All that good is gone. Right? Now it becomes kind of part of the evil empire, like most fintech companies do.
Rebel. Okay, you're leading us into the next topic, which is regulation, which no DeFi panel can avoid this topic. I want to throw two questions to the group that I'm going to mix together, which is, number one, should DeFi be regulated? But the next question is, can it be regulated? And let's kind of do the second one first. If DeFi is in its purest form based on immutable contracts on the blockchain, and someone publishes the contract and then they lose control, there's no admin key, there's no back door, it's immutable, it's just up there. Okay? There's no one in charge, there's no one home at that point. How do you regulate it? Can you regulate it? Is this even is it like a castle in the sky?
You can. But the regulation doesn't come, I mean, if you think about regulation as it exists today, it's all built on a trust system, which is funny because none of us really trust traditional finance in the room, right? But the idea is gatekeepers. So there are a lot of things in traditional finance that don't touch regulation. Anytime someone gets an exemption, anytime someone builds a piece of tech that the regulator says, look, we don't know what to do with this, but they still stick it inside of those gatekeepers, meaning to get into traditional finance, you have to go through a gatekeeper. Usually those are banks. So you give them your KYC, you go through the whole process, you get money in the bank, and then you can spend that money and send it elsewhere. And DeFi is going to be no different. DeFi will remain decentralized to a certain extent. There's going to be kind of, I would call them centralized silos. That might be KYC, that might be AML, that might be other facets that regulators are not going to allow to move, to just not do. You're not going to be allowed not to do AML, moving billions or trillions of dollars. It's just not possible in today's world. But the gatekeepers will be your traditional centralized, whether they're exchanges, whether they're funds, those will be the gatekeepers. DeFi will sit in the middle, and that'll maintain some level of probably decentralized settlement, but probably to some extent centralized order books, at least when it comes to trading.
Can it be regulated? Should it be?
I think it probably should be regulated. I mean, but it needs to be regulated in the right way. And the right way isn't getting kind of regulation from traditional finance and trying to fit it into DeFi, because that's not working today. I'm saying it should be regulated because, I mean, the one thing that I'd want to see regulated is probably kind of seeing AML controls happening within DeFi. I mean, it's no secret to anyone that it's easy and people are able to launder money. However, the right approach is probably not for trying to find kind of that centralized gatekeeper that you can regulate and hold responsible for it. We're already seeing the kind of more kind of technical, modern approaches to it. An example of that, Credora, who are offering kind of ZK proofs, kind of ability to perform KYC, where it allows users and protocols to kind of submit, undergo KYC, but equally at the same time not sharing their actual documents with any centralized party, which kind of aligns well to what DeFi is. You know, DeFi and crypto is, the whole point is that the loss of trust in centralized bodies. If we can develop a solution, if the industry can develop a solution where personal information is being shared and you're complying with existing regulations without doing so, then I think we're in a good place, and that's probably the direction we want to move in.
My experience as a member of the Securities Exchange Committee in Spain, representing crypto industry there, is yes, we should regulate DeFi, but the question is how. Because take one thing in mind. When you provide a loan and you are an individual, you need to follow rules. But these rules are different if you are an individual or if you are a company. And this is the key on this question. Probably we should regulate DeFi services, taking in mind that they are services in which services are being provided in a peer-to-peer way. So there we have individuals providing financial services to other individuals. This is a new kind of scenario. It's basically like how we are regulating internet. We don't put any rules about how you send packets or information through the network, but we have different layers. And if you want to create a service, the rules you need to follow are different if you are posting information in a blog or if you are a company like, for example, a traditional media company. So for me, this is the key point of, and the countries following this method, thinking on DeFi services as financial services being provided between individuals, are in the right way to regulate this.
Fair enough. I think we got to call it, my friends. Great panel. Thank you so much. Big round of applause.